Welcome to the Getting to the Root of It podcast, where our mission is to unearth the power and potential of the CBD hemp wellness industry. Grab a seat as we root out the myths from the marketing and discover the science-backed benefits of this popular plant medicine. Hosts Bob Finnegan and Sarah Nilsson shoot it to you straight to help you make educated choices regarding hemp-based wellness.
And welcome to Getting to the Root of It with Sarah and Bob. Thanks for joining us today, and I'm really excited about today's interview. Kevin is a proud husband, father of four, and founding member of Thompson Burton, PLLC, which was named as Supplier of the Year in 2014 by the Association of Multi-Level Marketing. Also, in a prior life, Kevin was an accomplished track athlete at the University of Tennessee, garnering All-American honors in a decathlon. And I'm really excited to be chatting with you, Kevin, because there's so many interesting places we can go with your area of expertise and your life experiences. But let's just start by tell us a little bit about your background, your family, kind of how we got here today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation. So I've been a practicing attorney for 16 years. It's hard for me to say that. I started in Nashville, and I did litigation, which is a hand-to-hand combat, and didn't quite enjoy it a whole lot, and didn't really like the business model per se, because you really have to sell a lot of your time to make a good living. And plus, nobody ever really enjoyed litigation. You never had a client that said, "Wow, that was a really great experience. Thank you." Yeah. And so I ended up taking a job in Michigan. I was an in-house lawyer for a couple of years, and that's where I fell into this niche that I'm in. And I think, candidly, in any sort of profession, riches are in niches. The more specialized you can be, the more I call it lower volume, higher margin kind of work. And the niche that I'm in particular, is related to direct sales. So it's the Amway, the Avons, the Green Compasses of the world, where companies have a unique product that they want to sell through a network of people, and they want to do it right. And luckily, there's just not many lawyers that do it. And I also happen to really enjoy it. I like working with aggressive, interesting, innovative entrepreneurs that are trying to grow businesses. It's a lot of fun for me. It kind of scratches that competitive itch that I have. And I've been doing it for really since 2007. Mm-hmm. Candidly, and mm-hmm. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate. We're glad you do.
Yeah.
And thanks for popping on with us. I want to take it back, if you're willing, and just there's a lot of things. First of all, just everything you had to do to get where you are, right? Just the whole experience in college and all the schooling and all the studying and passing of the exams, and then getting some experience on your belt, and then having your own firm. Like, first of all, congratulations, and shows a lot of dedication to your craft and determination. But let's take it back to college. I said in your intro, and you're being humble. You kind of skimmed over it, but talk to me about you were a decathlete at University of Tennessee.
Yeah, so I did the decathlon, which is 10 events in track and field, which it's 5 events day 1, and then 5 events day 2. And it was an incredible experience for me for a number of reasons. And for those not familiar with the decathlon, people are like, "Is that where you ski and shoot and swim?" And no, it's track and field. It's the 100-meter dash, long jump, shot put, pole vault, the 400, the mile, things like that. And Dan and Dave were very popular decathletes in the 90s, if people remember those names. Dan O'Brien, Dave Johnson, of course, Bruce Jenner from the 70s, now Caitlyn Jenner. And so for me, I was an All-American, so I was top 8 in the United States. But people hear that and they think, "Oh, you're an elite athlete." I was good enough to have an experience in college and be a factor in college, but I wasn't too good to where I didn't hang on too long. I had a lot of teammates that hung on a little too long, and they sort of, for lack of a better way of putting it, they wasted a few years chasing the Olympic dream. And maybe it wasn't a waste. For me, I knew that I wasn't good enough, period.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, I love basketball, but I'm never going to beat LeBron James. I just don't have the God-given gifts, no matter how hard I work. And with track and field, I knew I didn't have that level of ability. When I showed up at Tennessee, there was a decathlete that was already there, Tom Pappas, and he would go on to compete in the Olympic Games 3 times for America. He did in 2000, 2004, and 2008. He was incredible. And I had him just beating my butt every single day. And literally in 9 of the 10 events, I couldn't even approach him.
Wow.
And so I sort of had him as a role model. So the main takeaway that I pull from sport is the importance of patience and humility. Humility came very naturally because I was never the alpha. I was always getting beat in something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I was better than some of the decathletes on our team. Most of the decathletes, we usually had about 4, and I was always top 2. But I was always getting beat by somebody, and that really keeps you humble. You don't run your mouth a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of an attitude that I have to this day. No matter how good you think you are, there's always somebody out there that can do it a little better, and you'd be wise to have a sense of humility as you go on about your career and your profession. But another thing that I learned that's really important that I think maybe your listeners can draw from is just the benefits of compounding.
Mm-hmm.
And going through that experience, I didn't have the vocabulary to express it or explain it, but there's certainly a feeling that if I have the right behaviors over time, I could be more like that Tom Pappas guy. If I could do what he does, I could get better. I might not be able to catch him. I'm going to try, but I would certainly get better. And the athlete that I was in the 5th year, I had a redshirt year, so my 5th year was dramatically different from the first year, and the results do compound. It's very, very subtle. I mean, if you were taking stock of results every single day, it'd be miserable and it'd be demoralizing. But when you zoom out and you have a multi-year approach, it's really impressive what you can accomplish over a longer time horizon. And so when I started my law practice, I really had that attitude was I might suck today, but these people that I think are laughing at me because I started out, it was my law practice started, I was a solo practitioner, and I had an awful looking website. And this was in 2009. I knew that in 2011, I wasn't going to be the same, right? It was a longer term investment, and I knew that, and I just had a hunch that I can figure it out. If other people can do it, I can do it too. And that was a bet on myself that ended up being a pretty good bet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, fast forward, we formed I partnered up with somebody in 2012 to build something. 1 + 1 = 3 in this scenario. He that's a different story that we can get into later. But now we've got over 30 attorneys at our firm, and we're one of the fastest growing firms in Middle Tennessee, which is pretty exciting.
It's interesting. Bob, did you play sports when you were in high school?
I did. I have a similar experience with a lot of ambition, some talent. I was a great 6th man many times on the basketball court. If you know what that analogy is, full of hustle, full of heart. Maybe didn't have the right dribble or jump shot, but it was really great to hear your story, and can certainly empathize with a lot of what you described, and certainly appreciate a lot of what you have accomplished.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have like an opposite view on it because I was not gifted athletically. Anybody who knows me that could be listening would probably be laughing right now, but I do have it is interesting how sports can define you, shape you. And I do remember vividly being in elementary school, intramural baseball. All my friends wanted to play. I wanted to play. It came down to pick, each team, pick. Sarah's the last one standing. And the guy, I want to say his name so bad, but I'm not going to. He said to the coach, the principal, he said, it was me, it was his turn. He was going to get me. He said, I would rather just have 7. Do we have to take Sarah?
Oh,
and
come on.
no, I said, and it defined me. And you guys, that was in 5th grade. And I never tried out for another sport again because that really devastated me. And also, one of the things that I attribute my drive and my career to is always feeling like I needed to prove myself. I needed to be really good at something. I needed to, I couldn't just be an employee. I had to be the best or whatever. And it's something that, has followed me in good ways and bad ways. So it's interesting how those lessons and things that we experience really do kind of travel with us and manifest in different ways throughout our lives. So yeah. Thank you. You guys can send your condolence cards to. You guys are like, oh, yeah. Bullying is another podcast, which we will be. No.
Yeah, for sure.
So one, Kevin, we really kind of in our podcast, Getting to the Root of It, we really do kind of cover all things wellness and hemp and CBD and a broad range of things. And when you and I were talking in your pre-interview, I was interested to hear a little bit about having that background of physical activity, competitive sports, and then transitioning into being a full-time attorney responsible for, several attorneys, having a firm. What kinds of things do you do to, for your personal wellness, your spiritual, physical, mental, wellness, to just sort of stay at the top of your game?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. And I think it starts with a mindset and having really clearly defined values as far as what is important. And I grew up with a single mother who did a great job, did her best, but she was very busy. And with me having 4 kids and married, the family is really important. Like just investing time and having time for them is important, only because I know that when I'm 70 or 80, I will give every penny I have at that time to come back to today. Like this is a good period to be alive with these young kids. It's a lot of fun. My oldest is 14, my youngest is 7. And so having that value that is a priority, right? I don't want to miss a game. I don't have to be the dad on the field coaching. I want to be there. And I think having that non-negotiable, everything sort of falls into place around that.
I think that's a pro tip right there, to have some non-negotiables. I mean, you kind of said that in passing, but I think I picked up on that. Like, as you're trying to find your balance, or, what you will not tolerate, what works for you, for your family, having some non-negotiables, identifying them and being confident enough to commit to them, I think is huge. I know that when my kids were growing up and stuff, it was no electronics at the table, right? So for eating dinner, it's no electronics, which seems kind of silly, but it was just one thing that we didn't have to argue about every week because we knew it. And there you go. No electronics at the table, Phone goes off at 9 p.m. or whatever, little things like that. But even for our fitness, for our mental health, taking that 30 minutes a day to just zone out, for me, that's what I need. I need like 30 minutes where nobody's bugging me on whatever, listening to music or on a walk, and it out of 24 hours, 30 minutes doesn't seem like very, hard to do, but some days, you guys, days.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So some days it kind of slips on by.
Yes.
Well, I think the rules have changed, right? And they make that point, which was fantastic. I also wrote that down, that commitment and that rigor, because the lines are so blurry on all parts of our lives. And convenience, it's easy to eat cheaper and easier to eat a cheeseburger than it is an organic salad. It's easier to, not work out than it is to work out. It's easier to take that next phone call and miss, opportunities in your life. So
That's the truth.
fantastic.
Yes.
Bob, that point reminds me. It's we've gone from having to struggle with scarcity, like scarce resources. Humans in caves back in the day. It was limited everything, and it was a real struggle for survival. And now it's having to deal with abundance. There's literally everything, and having the power of will and having the judgment to. I mean, think about it. We're just surrounded by things that are not really good for us. There's endless entertainment. There's endless things online. There's endless, sex via apps. I mean, there's diet and sugar everywhere. All these things that used to be scarce are abundant, and so now the responsible adults have to navigate that responsibly. And I don't claim to be perfect. I noticed my daughter, who's 12, on TikTok for like an hour. I mean, that's just a complete waste of time. And so we all struggle with it, and just keeping those priorities in the back of your mind at all times it's important, and it makes it a little easier, I think.
You mentioned the pandemic, and that kind of leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you about. Being an MLM attorney and going through the last, all of 2020 and certainly even the first half of 2021, what kinds of shifts did you see in the industry as a result of going through that pandemic?
Yeah, so good lawyers give answers that are meaningless, right? I mean, I saw good and bad. I saw good and bad. Companies that sold health and wellness did well because people were more cognizant, like, I need to do better here. And also companies that were positioned pretty well grew, meaning there was a higher demand for income because people were panicking. And so I noticed a lot of growth in the sector. Now, some companies, for example, if you're selling travel, well, guess what? You've got to do something else. During the pandemic, travel's coming back, but those sorts of companies just suffered. And so there really wasn't a clear pattern that I could make out, other than the leadership teams, the people that were able to adapt the fastest tended to do better. Some folks were deer in the headlight and they just got steamrolled. Obviously, some companies rely on having regular conferences, 3 times a year, quarterly or quarterly conferences. And those went away. And so then pivoting to Zoom and being engaging with the community via digital tools, that was super important, obviously. But net, the sector grew. Our firm, I say it with some measure of guilt, we actually had a record year, which surprised me. In March of 2020, I thought the end was near. Right, things were shut down and courts were closed. We have a lot of litigators, and so we figured that part of our business wouldn't do very well, and they still litigated. They just transitioned it to online formats, and so there's no real pattern other than I think it's a great time to be in health and wellness, period. And I think going forward, it's a great time to promote products that make people feel better and look better. That's not going away. And the reality is, and political, it's not a right or a left thing. There is a widening gap of wealth inequality, and so inflation is a real thing, and it's getting worse. And again, I'm not assigning blame to any political party. It's been going on for a long time. But what's happening is, with inflation going up, people with assets are doing well because their assets are rising in prices, but the wages aren't going up, so people aren't earning more money. So stuff is going to get more expensive, but the earnings aren't going to. The wages aren't going to keep up with those increases. And so people are going to have to find ways, and they've been doing this for years, but I think it's going to accelerate. They're going to have to find ways to increase income. And you're not going to do it by, being being an influencer on Instagram, just with a single level reward plan. You're going to have to do it by moving a lot of product and building organizations. You're not going to be able to do it by driving Ubers, in my opinion. And so I think the direct selling opportunity offers something for people that are willing to work. It's a meaningful way to subsidize your income and potentially replace your income. So I think it's a good time to be in the opportunity business.
Do you think that, I agree that, this channel, it kind of gives that happy medium between connection and convenience, people still working with people and getting that sort of social aspect of it, but it also can be very convenient and, that there's no ceiling, all that kind of stuff. But do you find that, in the current environment with the pandemic and everything, that the barrier of entry is getting harder or the same? Like, did you see as many companies trying to start up during the pandemic? Do you feel like companies are fizzling out that aren't doing it, the right way, that aren't going to be able to stand the test of time?
Yeah, I'm seeing more positives than negatives. And like I said, it's a good time to provide good, meaningful opportunities. And so there's a lot of competition now for companies to compete for people to move product. There's more competition, not less, to answer your question. Yes, some companies did fizzle out, but they were likely on their way out anyways. And I just think there's such an ocean of need for additional income that you're going to have entrepreneurs trying to find a way to solve that problem.
If you're a distributor, a potential distributor, you're looking at the plethora of opportunities in the channel. What kind of advice would you give to someone? Like, what types of things would you suggest they look for in order to find a company that you, in your opinion, has a fighting chance of really, being successful?
Yeah, it's you got to love the product that you're selling. It's got to, everything rises and falls on really leadership. So you have to trust the leadership team because they really control the direction and the future of that company. And if you're getting a bad signal, then that's a sign. So leadership team's important. And then product is massively important. I call it the grandmother test. If you can't sell the product to your grandmother with a straight face, then that's not the right thing. So you got to love product.
Is that a legal term, the grandmother test? Is that a legal term?
It is, yeah. Oliver Wendell Holmes, a Supreme Court justice. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's and then really attention to detail. So just the interface. If people sweat the small stuff, it's a good sign that they've got the big details covered as well. And so it really boils down to your affinity for product. And of course, the ROE has to be there, the return on the energy, the structure of the compensation plan needs to be easy to understand. It doesn't have to be 100% understandable because they tend to be pretty complicated because they're algorithms. Basically, that's what a compensation plan is. It's an algorithm that just divides the money up between various people. But there needs to be a clear path outlined for earning decent income. And if that's too nebulous, then that tends to be a bad sign.
So speaking on that, you work with a lot of companies and research others and been around for a long time. So what's the, I know that especially when it comes to compliance with the FTC, there's some no-nos around, the model not really tending to have an end user that's not a distributor, right? To have a real customer at the end of the line here. And, as a consumer, how would you even know what to look for as far as like, does this company in compliance, do I run the risk of, getting shut down or having to pivot on everything?
It's a great question. So as a distributor, it really boils down to your ability. If you can generate customers, there's a good chance that other people in the organization will as well. And also, what's the general theme? What's the emphasis? And I'm saying this, companies can talk about recruiting and building organizations. That's not illegal, but there needs to be some sort of treatment given to retail, and over the past 10 years, that hasn't always been the case. And you mentioned the FTC. I'm going to let my freak fly here. That they're not my favorite agency, only because they haven't provided really meaningful guidance to the industry. And just to sort of recap what's happened recently with them, typically what they've done since the 80s is when they allege fraud, which they do this quite frequently, they will shut a company down before there's a hearing. And people respond, well, if it's a bad company, they had it coming anyways. Well, that's not how the law works, right? Even if somebody's guilty of a crime, you've got to have proof before you bust down their door. Right? It's a basic American concept, and so for years they've shut down companies really that they could have defended themselves if they were able to mount a defense, and they were never given that chance. And so that practice was argued in front of the Supreme Court, I think in August of 2020, and the decision came out about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, unanimously 9-0. The Supreme Court said, you guys don't have the authority to do that. You've been doing that without authority forever, right? And nobody was willing to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And obviously the Supreme Court, the structure of it's changed. But 9-0, so the three liberal justices that you would think would, they'd find a way to interpret the language to favor the FTC. Even they said this is egregious. So my point is, the FTC was humiliated, and how they're going to pivot and change their approach going forward, and what that means. It's the new rules are being written literally day by day
in real time. And hopefully, I think we're in for an improvement. I tend to be more optimistic than pessimistic. I think that they're going to have hat in hand and slow down a little bit. And instead of regulating companies that sell skincare products, and candidly, my opinion, let's assume somebody's overpaying for a skincare product. Who cares? The Federal Trade Commission, now they're focusing on Amazon, and Facebook, like things that really change the structure of the economy. Really move the needle.
Yes, that's what they're focusing on now, which, amen for that. Who cares about, in my opinion, Vima selling energy drinks? I don't care. I think the market can take care of that. So now the FTC seems to be orienting itself in a more noble direction.
Right. Wherever there's a demand, there'll always be a supply, right? So if nobody's going to buy skincare that they might think, then companies aren't going to sell it. But as long as people are buying it, then it kind of works itself out. Now, tell me, like as a corporate perspective of a company, like how do you really control? The corporate language and might be really focused on customer driven or compliance and all things favorable. But how do you really control the telephone game when the sales field kind of takes a hold of something and then trickles it down, and then maybe it deviates from the truth a little bit? How as a company, how do you put a lid on that?
You have to try. And so the analogy is with children, if they're out in the city spray painting everything, at some point you have to take responsibility as a parent. You can't say, well, they're just doing what they want to do, right? Yeah. It's their problem, not mine. At some point you have to get involved. And the way the law works, if you benefit from activity in the field, you have an interest to make sure that they're behaving. And so you have to try. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be perfect, and you don't have to surveil people's text messages and phone calls. But you do have to have a compensation plan that incentivizes the right behavior. That's a good start. And then number two, you have to try to train people what to do and what not to do. And once you push out good information, then the field, they start sort of tattling on themselves, right? They can spot the problem. and that drives better behavior in the field. And so there's a lot of different things a company can do. Even the FTC has said, there's no formula for this, but they do expect companies to try and make the effort.
As somebody, I had spent several years in the field myself, and I don't think as somebody in the field, you even understand the impact that it can have. You're independent, you're kind of doing your thing, and you can hear what the company says, but you're still out there saying whatever you're going to say. And I don't think from the field perspective, they understand the impact that it can have directly on their ability to do business. Is, for example, if a company were to get shut down or get a letter and everything has to pivot. So, I think it's helpful to educate the field that what you say really does impact the company, or can.
Well, yeah, to build wealth, you need to play long-term games with long-term people. And so the company's playing a long-term game. They want to be in business for a long time, which is why they're pushing out training. And that's what the company needs to explain to the field. Like this is how we're going to be in business for a long time. And you want people to associate with the company that has a high value for that, right? That wants to do things right, and that wants to build a check that will last. And that takes time. It's the whole compounding thing we were talking about earlier. It's some people get overwhelmed when they first launch one of these companies, and it's like, oh my gosh, how do we do all these things? And it's just step-by-step progression towards the right direction, right? And over time, you get there.
We're going to run out of time here in a second, but I do want to ask you, hemp, CBD, hemp, all things, it's obviously an emerging market. It's everywhere. What are your thoughts around this particular, hemp and CBD within this channel, in space, in the direct marketing? What are your thoughts as far as the direction you see that going? You think it's a good move? Is it the problems you see?
I think it's great. I think it's right in the sweet spot of what our industry does well. And so there's a lot of CBD products out there in the marketplace, but there's a lack of education. And that's the function of having a sales force. That's what a company is paying for. They're paying for a sales force to tell the story and explain why this product is good, the particulars about it, why it's legal. And so that's the sweet spot. It's health and wellness. And so companies that do sell quality CBD products, they move. People, they love this stuff. That's one thing I've noticed since 2014 is that when people consume these products, they love them. And they talk about them.
Works.
The challenge is, it works. The challenge is, which again is, I think, the opportunity that we have is restraining the disease claims, because there's so much information online about CBD being used to mitigate diseases like seizures, for example, or arthritis or depression, you name it. I literally seen a claim where somebody said that the CBD oil brought their dog back from the dead. Right, this dog died for 5 minutes. Put a little dropper in its mouth, and poof, resurrected. Right, unbelievable. Not your company.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's
heavy disclaimer.
yeah. I think it's a great category. I'm bullish long term. The FDA is sort of letting the market do its thing, and as long as companies don't make disease claims, those companies are being left alone, which is promising.
And do you think that's going to continue? Do you think the FDA is going to come in and tighten the screws? Do you see that as getting problematic, or
it's too late? Yeah. So they say the FDA has sort of implied that they're okay with it as long as you stay out of disease territory. And the FDA currently, my understanding is they're pretty busy with corona-related things. So I think CBD is going to be a hot sector for a long time.
Oh, good news.
We do too.
Yeah, especially for companies that are doing it right. I love
Amen.
it. All right, so I really appreciate you taking the time with us, Kevin. And I found this very interesting. I know our viewers will too. I have a couple questions we like to ask at the end. Just we're not giving you any prep for this. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Let's
All
go.
right. Okay. What is the best piece of advice that you got from your mother or father?
My mother would say, you can soar with the eagles or hang with the chickens. You get to decide.
Ooh, I like it.
Love it.
Nothing against chickens. Chickens are birds too. No,
that's right. That's true.
All right. So you have 12 hours. You can be anywhere with anyone doing anything. Money's no object. Logistics no object. What would you be doing?
I'd be with my wife in Croatia, one of the Croatian islands, for 12 hours.
Oh, no kids.
Yeah, hell no, no kids. No.
Hell.
Come on.
Telling. Okay.
It's a beautiful place. Beautiful place.
All right. Last question. It's Friday night. You're going out to eat. You're going for your favorite meal. Where are you going?
It's a steakhouse, and we have one in Franklin called Cork and Cow. That's our spot.
Pork
Special date
cow.
night. That's where we're going.
Pork and Cow. Sounds good. If you're in what part of Tennessee?
We're a little south of Nashville.
You're in the Nashville area, check out Pork and Cow. You heard it here from Kevin.
Right.
Thank you so
Shameless
much.
plug. Love it.
Thank you so much for talking with us, Kevin. I hope that we get to chat with you again. There's so much we can unpack, especially when we start talking about the legalities of the industry. But I really liked, just hearing your story and bringing to the table, and appreciate having the opportunity to work with you. So thank you. To our listeners, download us. Don't forget to subscribe to Getting to the Root of It at Apple or Spotify, or all places that you can find your podcast. And we will be signing off here, Sarah and Bob.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, David.
Yes, so much fun.
All right, talk to you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to Getting to the Root of It. If you enjoyed today's show, visit gettingtotherootpodcast.com to access information about our guests and to sign up for our newsletter. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.